Welcome, everybody, to the Monday Night Tours. We are your guides on this magical journey that takes us through the Monday Night Wars. And a Happy New Year to all of you as we begin to voyage in to the 1996 editions of Raw and Nitro. And, of course, I am joined today by Kyle Hogan. How's it going, buddy?
Oh, not too bad, Josh Kaiser, since you didn't even introduce yourself.
Well, you know, sometimes you just get so excited. We've been on break, and for some of you who may be looking for the, January 1 episodes of Nitro and Raw, they're getting posted a little late. We apologize for that. The holidays came up, my bachelor party came up, so there's a lot of things going on, a lot of excitement outside of the wrestling world, but we're back. And, we're going to make it up to you. We'll have this episode out, and then a couple days later, we'll release the January 8th editions of Nitro and Raw. And Kyle, we'll just kind of get right back into the flow and the groove of Nitro and Raw.
Do you have an idea of, and once again, this is me asking not because we're doing any filler. I literally don't even know. Would our fans, our dozens and dozens of fans, would they expect both the January 1st and the January 8th? You think we're going to put both of them out on next Tuesday and give them just kind of like a double header?
It could be a double header. We may even be able to get the January 1. These ones might even be releasing this weekend, and then by Tuesday you'll get the January 8th. So maybe you'll get a little bit of a filler for the weekend. I'm not sure when this will get dropped, but hopefully sooner than later. Maybe we'll get it out to you guys by the end of the weekend. But,
so basically what you're saying is, and once again, I'm answering this question based on the fact that people already are listening to this, so they already know the answer.
Right, right.
Basically, they're going to get both episodes by Tuesday.
Correct.
That's the goal.
We'll have it all out there, and we'll be back on there, and then every Tuesday, you guys will get the next week's review as we had been doing. So
business as usual at that point.
Right, exactly. That said, Kyle, let's just get right into it. We've got a lot to discuss. Of course, we're coming back with the new year. 1995 is in the past. For the WWF, we can say thank God. For WCW, we can say hopefully, much like Sting, they're going to continue to be on a roll. And we had Starrcade, Kyle. We're coming to you now live from Atlanta, following the Starrcade pay-per-view. We have a new world champion, Kyle. Ric Flair won the Triangle match, went on to win the world title. I think something you and I both kind of saw coming, given the fact that he was only in one match, while all the other guys in the Triangle match will have already performed in two matches before a world title match. So Flair is your champion, Hogan is off suspension, and Pepe is dressed like Uncle Sam because why the fuck not, right?
Hey, 1996 is already on a roaring start.
I gotta say though, while Pepe's dressed like Uncle Sam, the rest of the crew looks very nice. They're wearing, some renditions of tuxedos or nice. It almost look like a black tie New Year's sort of affair. And it's New Year's Day, Kyle, and they're opening the show up discussing we got Hogan back off suspension, and he's getting a world title shot, which seems incredibly unfair.
It does and it doesn't, because you got to remember, almost everybody else that's been in the talk the past couple of weeks has had a title shot against Macho Man. So Hogan, I think, was supposed to get this title shot, whether it was going to be him and Macho or him and Flair. Yeah, if you don't know the storyline, they just say, hey, Hogan's off from being suspended for being a bad boy, and now all of a sudden he goes from being suspended to being the number one contender. Yeah, that seems like a little suspect, but I think when you go back and look at the fact that you had Luger who went for the title, you had Flair who went for the title, Giant went for the title. Basically, the only reason why Sting didn't go for the title because they didn't want to probably do a face versus face type of confrontation. So here we are with Flair. And once again, number one contender matches. I'm sorry, rematch clauses apparently still don't exist, and Macho Man's just out of the world title picture, and so now we have Hogan.
But Macho Man Kyle will be in a match tonight, and actually, he's going to be in our opening match. He's going to get some revenge on Arn Anderson. Apparently, Arn Anderson at Starrcade may have used some knuckles, if you will, to help solidify. Help solidify Flair's 12th title win. So Macho has a some payback he wants to dish out, and Kyle, as we get ready to go into that first match, I had to laugh because they're basically like, okay, we've got Hogan and Flair, we've got Macho and Arn, Sting and Lex are tagging up. Are they friends? That's a storyline we haven't used yet, but let's try it again. We'll see if they're going to be friends. Let's get to the ring. And then Mongo yells something right at the end. Always typical Mongo, trying to get the last word in as the commentary team gets out. So our opening match, Kyle, we've got Arn Anderson versus the Macho Man. And as they're introducing the contestants, we get another spoiler for Raw. So, of course, the Raw Bowl, which we'll be discussing here in a little bit, is going on, and Bischoff calls it the Toilet Bowl and then gives out the winner. So for those of you who watched, of course, the Smoking Guns do win the bowl, and if you watch Nitro first, you found out the Smoking Guns won before you even turned on the bowl. So, Kyle, I don't know, what'd you think about the spoiler there at the beginning?
You know what? If they already knew everything that was going, I'm very curious how much Bischoff knows in the production side of things. If he only knows the results of the matches, or did he also know what other shenanigans that they pulled? Because I know we're going ahead of it, but with the Raw Bowl, you can tell that WWF is also kind of taking off the kid gloves when it comes to going back at WCW now.
Yep. So we'll see. I don't know how much he did or does not know, but he knows at least the results of the match. So he lets us know Smoking Guns are going to win that Toilet Bowl. And then he reminds you that the C in WCW stands for committed.
Still does.
Then we get into our match, Kyle, and it's actually a solid match between Arn and Macho Man. Of course, Macho Man's still having the taped up arm, and you might call him Arn Anderson. I'm going to call him Arm Anderson based on the fact that he worked the arm the entire match here. Good ring psychology, of course. If you're in a fight and you see a guy's got a weakness, he's coming off an injury, he's rehabbing something, that's the point you're going to attack, and that's what Arn does for the majority of this match. Yeah,
it's two wrestlers that are very, they're very good. I don't know how else to explain it other than just saying that, like, they know how to have a match with each other. Arn's been doing this for God knows how long, and Macho Man has always been the consummate professional of making heels look good. So there's the ring psychology in this. I mean, there's probably two people there are not a whole lot of people that are better than Macho Man and Arn Anderson as far as taking what they're given and putting a match and kind of taking advantage of the obvious things that you should work on in a match between the two of them.
Right, and that's what he does. Eventually, of course, Macho Man's going to get the upper hand, but then ultimately Arn Anderson's going to pull out the brass knuckles,
dick knuckles,
out of his drawers there, if you will,
his singlet, if you will.
Ultimately, though, there's the referee gets knocked out, and Macho Man's going to get the brass knuckles, use them on Arn, and ends up getting the 3 count. Then, so Arn gets a little taste of his own medicine. And the match,
which by the way came from his dick,
it sure did. After the match, Benoit shows up, so it's good to see Benoit back and actually
as a horseman.
And him and Pillman get into the referee's face, and they basically said, "Hey, Macho Man used some brass knuckles out of Arn's dick," and they don't. Randy Anderson, who we thought was the fourth horseman, must have turned again, so he pretty much ignores it.
Call him the Big Show. How many times he's turning?
Right, how many turns he's had. This was a 2-star match for me, Kyle. It was solid enough. I'm not sure I was crazy about the ending, but it was fine, I guess. How about you?
It's not a bad start to Nitro overall. Like I said, you got the former world champ exacting revenge on the man that cost him the world title. I do wish that the wrestlers themselves were doing more of the storytelling than the commentary. But then at least the story is being told. I gave it a little bit better of a rating, just because I think the ending was appropriate, I guess. Nobody really got over on anybody, and overall the match itself was good. I gave it 2.5 stars.
All right, fair enough. We come back from commercial, Kyle, and we're reminded yet again that the Smoking Guns will have won the Raw Bowl. So in case you would flip back and forth, another reminder from Bischoff that that's what happened. So then we get Lord Steven Regal with that skin condition known as Jeeves. versus Chris Benoit. So it makes most sense since Chris Benoit was just in the ring that he'd be already out there waiting, right? Nope.
No, it's the Sting thing where he was out and then he gets to go back and then he gets to go back out again.
Did you notice when he came out, though, he does not come out to the Horseman music?
Yeah, he still has his music.
Which I guess that doesn't... And his music sucks, so I don't know why he's not coming out to the Horseman music, but he's not. And then Mongo lets us know that, you got the Canadian Crippler versus Lord Steven Regal, so Canada could be succeeding from England again.
Succeeding, not seceding.
Not seceding. Succeeding.
It drove me nuts. And also, I mean, Canada, for those of you, your history buffs out there, Canada has been a completely sovereign state since 1982. So, Mongo, you need to update your history books, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. They do let us know that Hank Aaron's in the house, Kyle. Of course, it makes sense. He's in Atlanta, that he'd be here. But I don't know if you noticed or not. I just feel like this is just as good a time as any, since this is when they actually showcased that Hank Aaron was in the crowd. Hank Aaron's in the front row, almost dead center of like the camera side, so you can pretty much watch him the entire show. The dude showed no emotion the entire time. I don't know if he was bored or tired or had no idea what was going on, but he could not have cared less about what was happening in the ring.
He was probably about as much into wrestling as Lex Luger in reality, probably whoever was. I also found it was very funny that Heenan said, like, hey, if he had listened to me, he would have hit 800 home runs.
Just classic Heenan right there.
Yeah, exactly.
The match between Regal and Benoit itself was, solid, I suppose. What you expect out of these two, a little stiff at times. And ultimately, this has one of the strangest endings. We said that a surfboard backslide, that's the word I'm trying to think of, 3 count for Alex Wright might have been the biggest surprise of 95. This might be the biggest surprise for 96 and how this match ends, Kyle, because at one point Benoit kind of like grabs the top rope and like pulls himself up and almost like does one of those over the top kind of crossbody splashes to the outside. Regal moves and Benoit hits the mats on the outside there. And Regal goes out there, picks him up, rolls him into the ring, and pins him, which you see from every once in a while. You see someone roll in and get a pin the guy, but he gets a 3 count, and that's how the match ends. This was very strange to me.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, yeah, it looked the match itself. I was actually really getting into only because really Benoit and Regal had a match that felt real. It felt like both
more like
a
brawl and a fight. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. It felt like they were actually doing like mat work, where like every move that they were trying to do on each other, you could tell the other one was trying to fight its way out of.
It didn't feel choreographed. It felt like a struggle, like a fight.
Yes, it felt like they were legitimately finding out who could actually win in a match. And so for that, I actually kind of appreciate it. It was a nice, fresh, just kind of something you don't expect from professional wrestling. The whole thing with Benoit trying to do, I don't know what they call that, like a plancha or whatever the hell they call that when they kind of like fly over that top rope to the outside. It'd be one thing if it was like exposed. I would have totally been on board. Sure. But I feel like spills like that happen all the time. Not every single move from the outside hits or connects the way it should. It just made it seem like he just knocked himself out and it
wasn't even like he landed on his head or hit a chair or a steel, the steel guardrail. He just landed on the mat out there, kind of like pancaked onto it.
Right, and then I was very surprised when he just kind of rolled him back in. I figured, okay, he's going for a pin, but obviously Benoit's going to kick. Oh wait, never mind. I guess it was just also strange. I
actually looked down to my notes and I heard the bell ring, and I'm like, "What the fuck did I just miss?" And I had to rewind to see exactly nothing. I missed him roll him into the ring.
Yeah, exactly. Because you think to yourself like, okay, they're going to start slowing the match down a little bit. Maybe Regal will work on something for a little while. Kind of get the upper hand. Benoit will ultimately probably come back, maybe do some underhand tactic because Benoit at this point is more of a heel than anything else. But Benoit is not in any position to job to.
No, that's
Steven
the
Regal.
Other end of it. Yeah, so that's I thought the same thing. I thought Benoit's kind of getting a push, and given that he joined the Horsemen, he had that whole grand entrance. Him and Eddie have kind of had some classics that you almost thought he was kind of getting to Eddie's level on a push, but maybe just below Eddie. And then here he is losing to Regal, who right now, Regal and Bobby Eaton are kind of in that tag team that's really floundering in their own right. So it was very strange.
And the other thing, too, was, if you notice, one thing I always try to look at is that Regal won, and then Regal talked a lot of shit afterwards. Like, usually whenever I see, like, the psychology after the match, so, like, it wasn't like Regal won, and then he was kind of like holding his side and kind of limping his way back to the back, and like, oh, he really had a tough time. He made the match look like, at the end of it, he was like, this is a horseman, this is a joke. Like, he was talking shit about Benoit, which then makes Benoit look bad, ultimately also makes the Four Horsemen look bad. And just overall, like I said, I don't know what they're going at with this. I don't know. I don't remember Steven Regal getting like a ton of a huge push. I know he's held a title or two in like singles titles there, but I mean nothing that's going to make you think he's going to be pushed to anything bigger than Chris Benoit ever was in WCW. So I mean, as far as like a score, I think I had this a lot higher until that kind of confusion, because I don't like the way Benoit had. I think I had this near a 2.5 star again. I think that the surprise ending was surprising. I guess that maybe I'll give it a little bit of the thought that was like, wow, that was, I guess you just, you know what they would say, anything can happen in the WCW. Overall score 2 stars.
I gave it a 1.75 stars, but same concept. I really was enjoying the match, and the ending kind of threw me in both good and bad ways. That said, Kyle, after the match, we get Mean Gene in the ring to interview the Four Horsemen, or the Three Horsemen without Flair, which I find very strange given the fact that, like, I feel like it's contractually obligated for Mean Gene and Flair to have an interview every week on Nitro. So this is a little different. You can never have all four. You can't have all Four Horsemen. So if Benoit's going to be in there, someone else can't be. So yeah, it had to be Flair this time. So Pillman basically gets on the mic and calls out both Arn and Benoit, saying, hey, the Horsemen are 0-2 tonight, and this is not what the Horsemen are about. Benoit blames his loss on luck and says that's the only way he can get, the only way he can lose. And Anderson basically gets on there and says, you shouldn't be calling out the Dungeon of Doom and all these other factions. We've got other fish to fry and that kind of thing. And
Did you notice that Pillman was like dressed up as like the Undertaker?
Pillman was dressed very strangely.
He had on like that long coat, like Undertaker leather coat.
Yeah,
that Undertaker always has to like derobe after every match. So yeah, when I had my notes here was Pillman looks like a disappointed dad in Undertaker garbs.
Did you catch Arn at one point says, "I'm sick of talking to the back of your head," to Pillman?
Right.
And I think the reason he said that was Pillman's
not listening to Arn. That's what the whole point is.
Well, not just that, but like I think that was
that's what it means, though. I've heard that saying before. Is someone talking in someone's back of the head, meaning that Pillman's not giving Arn the respect and looking at him face to face and getting advice, and like, Arn's trying to give him orders or telling him what he needs to do, and Pillman's just not paying attention.
Well, I took it more as Arn trying to cleverly say, "Hey, turn around because everyone's just staring at the back of your head on the hard camera side, and you need to like talk to me face to face, as in turn face to face, so people can see because right now us as the viewers see just the back of his head, and that's not good production quality standpoint from a program. So I thought he was trying to say, hey, turn around, talk to me side by side, so people can actually see your face when you're talking.
I can see that from like Arn Anderson nowadays, because he's such a production guy. I mean, he's been like the gorilla position guy for WWE for so long. But I think that was more the fact that he feels like Pillman's just doing his own thing and not listening to the enforcer. But I can see where you're coming from with that. But I don't think he would have shot that. That seems more like a shoot. And like kind of like breaking that fourth wall.
No, I took it more as a subtle way to say, hey, turn around, jackass, you're facing the wrong way, kind of thing. But I don't know. Ultimately, though, Kyle, the Dungeon of Doom do come out, and you see some of the worst hold me back sort of thing from Kevin Sullivan. And then ultimately the Giant is going to hold them all back and kind of carries them back to the locker room. And that's sort of your segment.
You know it's bad when your voice of reason is the Giant.
Ain't that the truth? After that, Kyle, we get our WCW Saturday Night promo, and we get the American Males are going to be going up against Arn Anderson and Brian Pillman, assuming they still get along now, and Lex Luger versus Cobra, and that's it. That's how they're hyping. That's how they're promoting Saturday Night this week, Kyle. Luger versus Cobra and the American Males versus Arn and Pillman.
I still love that they still have that old picture of Luger looking like he's objecting in a court of law, and also I noticed that he's taking on Cobra, which is Sergeant Pittman's nemesis. I feel like Jimmy Hart has something to do with this. Like Jimmy Hart trying to bury Pittman by having Luger take on really Pittman's only like storyline or nemesis in Cobra. So like, you know what, if Pittman, you did the wrong thing, man. You're shaking the beehive, and Jimmy Hart is now he's gonna pull what the hell is that guy's name? The Ultimate Warrior knockoff,
the Renegade. Yeah,
he's gonna renegade you if you keep on trying to bug Jimmy Hart. He's already taken away your main bad guy.
It is unfortunate, but so that's your Saturday Night, Kyle. After this, we get the Super Assassins, which of course is Barbarian and Warlord, with Colonel Parker going up against Sting and Lex. And I love it, Kyle. Every single time we have two partners like Sting and Lex, or Sting and Macho, or Sting and Hogan, yada yada yada, they always say, "Hey, those two didn't come out together. So are they, friends or not?" I'm so sick of this fucking storyline, and yet here we have it yet again, rehashed.
Yeah, it's rehashed almost every week, it seems like now, and it seems like nothing ever bears fruit whenever they bring it up. But they'll keep on going. So whatever. It's 1996. It's a new year, same angle.
Speaking of keep on going, this match is immediately interrupted, and they go to the dual screen because somebody's at the commentary booth. So I gotta imagine if you're interrupting Sting and Lex, there's got to be something big going on. What's Hogan up to? What's Flair up to? Oh, excuse me, it's Craig Pittman. Craig Pittman, Kyle, your boy, comes to the commentary booth, and he calls out Mongo McMichael and basically says, Mongo, you went from amateur to pro. I respect everything you've done. I'm trying to go from amateur to pro. You can understand my plight. Why don't you become my manager? Just think about that for a minute, Kyle. Craig Pittman is so desperate for a manager now. He's going to the worst commentary guy that we have there, who has never managed, never wrestled, has very little to do with wrestling other than now for 3 months he has been a commentator, and Craig Pittman is begging him to be his manager. This is just sad at this point.
At this point, I just feel bad because obviously Mongo declines, and it's almost as if like your own mother refused to make you pancakes for breakfast. Like if your mother's not going to make you pancakes, no one's going to fucking make pancakes for you. And I think that's where we're at right now with Pittman. And so I don't know where he goes with this. Although Mongo tries to give him some sound advice and saying like, "Hey, you don't need anybody. All you need is you just need to be you.
You just do your thing. You're doing well just on your own. Go get him, Tiger."
Yep. And then Pittman says some sort of army lingo, like I don't know what he said, but he said something along the lines of "okie dokie" in army talk,
right?
And that was it. But like I said, the funny thing is, this doesn't end here. So he does keep on doing this. I remember that Pittman. This is not like he takes Mongo's advice, which thank God he doesn't. No one should ever. But yeah, it just seemed like a real weird angle that was presented in creative. Was like, oh, let's have Pittman ask Mongo, and nobody in the back was like, why the fuck would he ever do that?
Right. But ultimately he does, and that's our segment. So I continue to, I guess, look forward to what Pittman does every week. The match itself, Kyle, though, I mean, what are we talking about? It's the Super Assassins jobbing to Sting and Lex. Ultimately, Lex reverses an Irish whip and throws the one assassin into the other, but kind of into the other. They kind of half-ass run into each other, and Luger picks him up for a torture rack. Meanwhile, Sting just goes over there and puts the other guy in the Scorpion Deathlock. There's a tap out of some sort. I guess the ref waited until both guys were in the ring to tap out simultaneously. I'm not sure what happened. The crowd was loved it, popped like crazy for that finish. I got to say, I didn't, Kyle. I gave this a 1.5 stars.
I think I'm kind of glad you gave it a 1.5 stars because I feel like I'm giving all these matches a little bit more of a benefit of the doubt than you are. Yeah, I thought the match overall was meh. Luger was in it for like 10% of the match. Sting handled the majority of the workload, which I think in the end we all wanted that anyways. If you want to have a half decent match, you're not going to have, all Luger basically was doing the old classic shooting your team in the foot by trying to get in and causing double teams because Nick Patrick, which now we'll call him Mick Muscles, is able to hold Luger at bay as Warlord and Barbarian are working over Sting. I always laugh. I laughed at the ending because I think it was Warlord that was up for the torture rack, and he was up in that forever. Like, that might have been the longest torture rack non-tap out in history, and only reason why obviously was because they were waiting.
I was going to say,
Sting.
I've never seen someone in a torture rack for so long without tapping. So props to whichever assassin that was.
It's hard to tell. And also in this match, you got the classic. Luger got the tag, but the ref didn't see it because he was trying to keep back Barbarian. And Luger tried to get in. He had to get brought back got back to his corner because the ref never saw it. And then the Barbarian actually switches with Warlord, so they never even tagged. And I know we complained about that, I think, like 2 or so weeks ago, where the same thing happened in the Arn Flair Sting Hogan match.
Yep.
Where like Arn never got tagged in, but he apparently was allowed in. This one's a little bit more forgivable because the Super Assassins look the fucking same. I don't even know if Nick Patrick even could notice that someone made a tag.
Right.
So little twin magic, as they may call it in these days. I gave this 1 3/4 stars. I think quarter of the match was distracted by Pittman, like you said. Luger got a rather easy night of wrestling. He really didn't do a whole lot other than his normal shit. I have no idea what the fuck they're doing with Luger right now. Now it seems like they're
don't worry, they don't either.
So it's so fucking weird. This match was totally inconsequential. 1 3/4 stars.
After the match, Kyle, we are going to get a Mean Gene segment. He's here to interview Jimmy Hart and the Giant, and he says, "I'm here to interview Jimmy," and he looks around like he's trying to find out where Jimmy Hart might be. And then Jimmy Hart shows up at the entrance ramp where he's standing, and he looks shocked, like he didn't expect him to be there, which is where he always walks out of. So
he's hanging around Lex too much. He's missing his cues.
And of course, Mean Gene and Jimmy Hart open up with digs at each other. Gene says something about Jimmy Hart's outfit looks like Diamond Barlow is part of Spike Jones' gang or something like that.
Another Spike Jones reference.
And Jimmy Hart makes a comment like, "Are you that tall? Or are you standing in a hole?"
They're the same height. They're just as tall as each other. As soon as he said that, I paused and looked at them, just where they were. I'm like, I think maybe Jimmy Hart's got a half an inch on Mean Gene. So I just found that joke to be a little bit, insecure for somebody who was already short.
Ultimately, there's not much said here. Jimmy Hart just reminds you about what happened with Hogan, and then reminds you that the Giant was attacked by chairs by Hogan, a couple weeks back or something like that, and that they haven't forgotten. Then we go to a Slim Jim commercial, and then a promo for Clash of the Champions, which will be coming out on TBS here in a couple of weeks. So we got that to look forward to, Kyle. And then we've got our world title match, Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, and I always hate that they do the champion coming out first, but here we get it again. Flair getting introduced first. And when Hogan got introduced, did you see all the Hogan foam, fingers come up in the crowd? I'm really starting to believe that they're giving these things away.
It almost seemed like it was perfectly spaced out, too. It seemed like every 4 feet there was another Hogan foam.
Right.
Foam figure. And so, yeah, I kind of seen that too. Another thing I also was confused about, and maybe that's just how Flair always has been. Does he wear the belt under his robe?
I was trying to figure that out too.
I'm like, is he pulling a Sting and not coming down to the ring with his belt? But then I saw later when Hogan was in the ring, I saw that Nick Patrick was Randy Anderson. I'm sorry, Randy Anderson. It was Randy Anderson was holding the belt. So because the moment Hogan's music played, Flair was derobing, but you don't see him open it up all the way to see if there was a belt underneath it. So I wasn't sure. I'm assuming he had it under the rope.
It's safe to assume. It's safe to assume.
The thing is, too, I think I believe, I'm a firm believer, though, that the reason why he did that and we don't see the belt, I bet you Hogan's name's still on the belt.
I'm sure the Hogan nameplate's still on there. They're just waiting until they finally give the title back to Hogan.
Yep.
So the match itself, Kyle. Oh, one other thing about Flair, I guess, before we start the match. Did you notice he was wearing red and yellow boots and knee pads?
Yeah, I did see that a little bit.
It distracted me. I'm like, why is he wearing Hogan-colored knee pads? And he's wearing black tights, but he's wearing Hogan-colored knee pads and boots. It was strange to me, I thought. The match itself went about as how you kind of thought it would early on.
I think you and I could write a Flair-Hogan match.
Pretty much. At some point, Flair will go to the top. Hogan will throw him off. At one point, Flair will get his Irish whipped into the corner, flipped over the top to the outside apron, where Hogan will give him a clothesline. At some point, there's going to be some eye gouges. At some point, Hogan's going to no-sell some punches. Ultimately, there'll be a figure four, which will, of course, get reversed. And this is, Kyle, when things start to take a turn, because that's when Jimmy Hart will show up. He distracts Hogan. Arn Anderson comes in with brass knuckles or whatever.
Dick knuckles.
Yeah, his dick knuckles, which he slaps Hogan with. Hogan no-sells the dick knuckles, turns around, hits Arn with the dick knuckles. And
Hold on. You missed a very important part of that. He knocks Arn to the ground and then reaches into his dick, pulls out the knuckles, and hits Arn with it. So
yes,
yeah, you can't forget that.
I'm sorry, he did violate
a grown
Arn's special area. Ultimately, the Giant's gonna come out with a stool to get revenge. It wasn't even a chair; it was literally like a bar stool. And Savage is gonna come out and stop that from happening. At some point, Randy Anderson is shown the knuckles that Hogan has in his hand, and he calls for the bell. I don't know if he's DQing Hogan or if he was DQing the Horseman for having the knuckles originally. It was very weird. The match is basically thrown out. I gave it a star and 3/4. It was pretty much what you expected out of it.
I thought it was entertaining enough. One thing I was trying to figure out, I think when I later looked it up, Hogan won the match by DQ, and I think what had happened was after he knocked Arn out, Hogan shows the knuckles to the ref, saying, hey, like Arn was trying to come in here and start some funny business. And instead of, to me, I would have been like, all right, well, you had the clear advantage in this match. I'll just let the match keep going and let you just finish off. I mean, let's just understand something real quick. Macho Man beat Scott Norton because fucking the Shark was laying on someone's legs, and that wasn't a DQ.
Correct.
Yet when Randy Anderson sees that there might have been something that might have happened, but I didn't see it, I'm going to go ahead and call for the bell. But I felt that it was a weird ending because Hogan was the one that actually was like, hey, Arn Anderson tried to hit me with these, or he did hit me with these, and I'm just, kind of getting my revenge. And Randy Anderson's like, all right, you got it, Hulkster, and then gives him the match with the DQ.
And then gives the DQ, yeah.
But then he doesn't win the title because you can't win a title on a DQ. Listen, weird ending. Kind of once again, kind of the Randy Anderson letting the match go. It's making me think that Hogan was actually going to win the title. But then it was Hogan, I guess, who wanted to win by DQ and therefore not win the title. But it was good to see most of the wrestlers that we've already seen that were kind of prolific in this kind of pour out at the end of the night. I gave it 2 stars.
Okay, right on. After the match, Kyle, there's some more shenanigans. Eventually, Hogan has the brass knuckles, and all the Horsemen are on their knees begging for mercy. The Giant kind of comes in, Macho Man comes in. Ultimately, the Dungeon of Doom kind of bring the Giant out. Zodiac starts saying words other than yes and no, which causes everybody to lose their minds.
Including Sullivan. You can hear that Sullivan's actually yelling at him to tell him to stop talking. Which I think was actually legitimately he was telling him as a performer, hey, stop talking. Right. Because Sullivan was not yelling hey, you be quiet, trying to be in character. He was more like, hey, dude, fucking shut up. So I thought that pretty funny.
Right. Mean Gene, of course, coming in to settle things down at the end of the show like he likes to do, Kyle. He's in there with Hogan and Macho Man. Hogan makes a comment that Flair has your belt and my belt, so apparently it's both of their belts. Gene at one point makes a comment that that ending was wilder than his New Year's Eve party, which, Gene throws some wild New Year's parties.
I'm about to say, I don't believe that. I believe that Mean Gene is about as coked up as Doc Hendricks. He just knows how to do it better.
Right. Ultimately, Kyle, we're going to get a Hogan and Macho Man versus Arn and Flair main event next week on Nitro. So they'll probably talk up the whole show next week if Hogan and Macho can trust each other or not in the main event.
Especially if they don't come down to the ring together.
Right, exactly. And then they made a comment that Macho Man made a comment about having a secret weapon, which Hogan says, "Hey brother, don't tell them about our secret weapon," and then says "monkey see, monkey do," and shows them some knuckles. So I think Hogan then spoiled what their secret weapon is just brass knuckles. Then he quotes Buzz Lightyear and says "to infinity and beyond." And
there were a lot of references in this. There was quite a few pop culture references all over the place that they were forcing. So, especially from Macho.
Right. Oh, yeah. Ultimately, the commentary team will confirm that the executive team for WCW was on premises, and they confirmed that will be your main event next week. And Mongo says there's no contenders. They're all contenders here in WCW, not pretenders like on that other show. And that's your Nitro, Kyle. What'd you think about it overall?
Overall, not a bad Nitro. I think the matches themselves were there's different styles in each of the matches. It wasn't kind of like the same canned stuff I think that we're used to seeing on that other show. So it was not bad. You had you had a tag match with a double I guess submission finish. You had a pretty stiff match with Benoit and Regal. You had a pretty decent ring psychology match between Macho and Arn, and then you had your classic. Everybody could write a Flair Hogan match, but once again, you had your two big your big heel and your big face going head to head. So it had a little bit of everything, but you can definitely tell that going through starting off 1996, Nitro is setting the bar right now. It's there's more stars, there's more entertaining matches. I think the storyline's being told better because there actually is one. So Nitro is indeed on the proverbial roll.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with you. I think it was an okay show. I think they've had some better ones in December, but it wasn't bad. And it's keeping things going, and they're showcasing all their stars. So overall, not a bad Nitro. That said, Kyle, let's just move right over into Raw, and it's the Raw Bowl. They've been promoting this for a few weeks now. The big January 1st Raw Bowl. And we open up, Kyle, and you have a bunch of like canned shots of crowds saying Raw Bowl, Raw Bowl, Raw Bowl, and rabble. They're ready. We got a lot of excitement today, Kyle. We really don't even know what the Raw Bowl is, but that's what we're gonna find out. Then also, Kyle, Vince McMahon let you know that the Nacho Man, the Huckster, Scheme Gene, and Billionaire Ted are going to be present in today's show as well, which, of course, Kyle, becomes infamous later on as you discuss the wars that these Billionaire Ted skits. So this is WWF's really their first time kind of acknowledging that there's a competitor on the other network, and now they're trying their best to kind of make fun of it. So we're going to find out what that is later tonight. But in the meantime, Kyle, we got a Raw Bowl, and they cut
brought to you by Lipton Brisk Iced Tea.
Yeah, they cut to Jerry Lawler, who's wearing a Cleveland Browns jersey, which is funny since he's been burying the Browns with the Art Modell thing pretty much all of last year.
Do you notice what his name was on his when they did like the marquee at the bottom? It said Jerry Musburger King.
No, I didn't. I did actually miss that, so that's funny.
Yeah, so I thought that was a little har moment.
Right.
Once again, it plays into the whole fucking show of this could have easily been a drinking game of every single time that they do a football pun.
I was going to say that. That was literally like the next thing I was going to say is if we wanted to turn this thing on and play a drinking game too, every time there's a football or sports related pun made during this show, you would be absolutely shit-faced by the end of it.
They did it so much that it went from being funny to, all right, you're stretching it, to fucking knock it off, to I'm actually impressed you guys are still doing it.
Like, it was amazing that they just kept it going on. And for the most part, they were all different. It wasn't like they just kept saying, like, oh, that play was a touchdown. Ah, that maneuver was a touchdown. They
went everywhere with this.
Every comment could be made. It was both impressive and irritating as hell. But here we are, Kyle. We got the ring. It's a normal wrestling ring, but it's kind of the mat itself sort of looks like a football field, and we're starting to get it. It's basically a four corners tag team match. The first team, Kyle, the Smoking Guns, your tag team champions, with the numbers 38 and 45, of course, referring to the Colt 45. Yeah, right, exactly. And so I thought that was clever. Then you get Yokozuna and Owen Hart. Yoko with 641, I believe, which is his weight. And Owen being 1, because I guess he just thinks he's number 1. Then you get Razor Ramon and Savio Vega. Razor with the number 4 on his jersey for how many times he's the Intercontinental title. And Vega had Uno because he's not...
Because, you know.
Because he's not English, I guess, or something.
Sure.
Then you get 1-2-3 Kid and our boy Cycle Sid. Kid with the 1-2-3 jersey number and Sid with the 00, because why not? And then they cut to Brother Love, who's doing some monologue in the locker room, but they talk over him the whole time, so you can't hear a word he says, and can't. It was just very distracting. I think what they were trying to get with that was that he always has his eyes closed when he talks, and he was back there giving like a pep talk to the wrestlers, and they were trying to say like, dude, open your eyes. The wrestlers are already out in the ring. So I figured that out, but I didn't figure it out until like the second or third time they cut to him in the back. And I feel like, I don't know if that was just me or if that was, they just didn't do a good job of explaining it at the beginning. They didn't do a good job, because I kind of went ahead as well. Like, yeah, I didn't know really what they were doing until maybe the second or third time they went back to him. Okay. Only other thing worth noting here before the match itself, when Razor Ramon's coming to the ring, one of the ushers, Goldust ushers, hands him some gold rose petals, which Razor does not take kindly to. And then I believe he ended up playing some Smear the Queer. Am I right? Right. Yeah. And then Goldust touches himself, and I think they called illegal touching on that. So the sports puns continue to fly, Kyle. And at one point, Vince says the NAACP should be looking into recruiting violations. I want to say he meant the NCAA, but I don't know for certain if there was some sort of scandal in 95 or 96. Well, I guess 95, where the NAACP had to look into it, but I feel like that's not the acronym he wanted when he was talking about recruiting violations. I think you're right. I don't remember the NAACP really getting involved in the affairs of college recruiting for sports. I totally could be wrong. Maybe we'll look it up later. I don't remember that. Yeah. Then again, I was also 9. I think they misspoke there. I think he wanted NCAA and went with that, but I don't know. As for the match itself, Kyle, a couple stipulations here. Once one teammate has been pinned, DQ'd, submitted, the entire team is gone, and each team is allowed one timeout. So that's how you incorporate football, I guess, into your sort of Texas Tornado tag team match. And you have Earl Hebner wearing a referee outfit, Kyle, flags and all. And also, any player could tag anybody at any time, which means you could have a moment where you have members of the same team taking on each other, and if that is to happen, physical contact has to be made with that other person before tagging out. Correct, which of course they pretty much opened the matchup with that. I believe both Smoking Guns. I thought they would build to that, and they went to that like very early. Yeah, the Smoking Guns were both in there, and they basically just kind of leapfrogged each other for a minute, and then ultimately both tagged in Yoko and Owen, who actually fought each other for a second. And then the match kind of gets on its way. And instead of going through the entire match, Kyle, I think we just need to highlight sort of the the main things, anything that we both thought was worth talking about, and of course, like the eliminations as they took place. So at one point, 1-2-3 Kid is going to call a timeout during the point where he's wrestling Razor Ramon, and so he's allotted his timeout. But then Razor pretty much ignores it and puts Kid into the Razor's Edge and drops it. And it's after this that Ted DiBiase, I think, gets on the ropes, distracts Razor, which leads to Sid coming and clotheslining Razor from behind and putting Kid on Razor, which gives Kid the 3 count on Razor. This was a strange sequence of events for me, Kyle, because I felt like when you get your timeout, they should have stopped the match at that point, which it looked like they were trying to do, and then Razor went forward with the Razor's Edge. I thought that would have been a fine way to disqualify Razor and Savio Vega, because they would have said, oh, Razor broke the timeout rules. But that's not what they did. It was like, you call timeout, but you could still get your ass kicked during it. And then ultimately, Sid with the weak clothesline from behind is what's going to finish Razor off. I don't know. What do you think about that whole series of events?
Well, I thought the series of events happened. It started with when Ted DiBiase comes to the apron. Hebner turns around and just takes his flag out of his pocket and then like spikes it on the ground, which no ref does. Just throws the fucking flag like just straight to the ground, like which apparently means nothing. But yeah, I once again this was, hey, let's have timeouts, okay, and then probably no one really told anybody what happens during a timeout.
I don't think they do. Okay, yeah.
I would think that if you're going to do it right, if someone calls a timeout, you put 1-2-3 Kid at his corner and Razor at his corner, or opposite corners, whatever the case may be, until the timeout's over, and then move on from there. Overall, it was good that Razor got to put his finisher in where he ultimately gets eliminated. So at least we're watching one of the bigger pops, which is going to be his finisher. So good on them for at least letting him have that. But yeah, that whole thing, and you're going to see later on that you go from 1-2-3 Kid calling a timeout to, or whoever called the timeout, whether it was Sid or 1-2-3 Kid, I don't even know, to the whole thing with being clubbed from behind, which, by the way, Sid makes no attempt to try and like do it behind Hebner's back. He clubs him and then goes back on the apron on the outside, right in front of Hebner.
Absolutely right in front of him. Yes, that's a good point. And
then he turns around to go and count the pin, and Savio's yelling timeout, 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 which apparently you can't do. So Razor's out, even though Savio's calling timeout, and you'll see this later in the matches where timeouts don't matter. That whole stipulation might as well not have existed.
Basically, they said that they were trying to, on commentary, say like, oh, Hebner didn't see the timeouts called. But anyways, we come back from commercial, Kyle, and we get Jerry the King Lawler drawing up the draw play, as he liked to call it, where he was basically putting a bunch of arrows and circles and X's and stuff on the screen, replaying what just happened with Kid getting the pin on Razor. Soon after, Yokozuna and Owen Hart are going to get eliminated, and I kind of like this elimination. They had the Yoko going up for the Banzai drop, and Owen Hart's kind of holding the legs of Bart Gunn, I believe, and Billy Gunn comes in from behind, pulls Bart Gunn away, drop kicks Owen Hart right when Yoko's dropping the Banzai, so Yoko Banzai drops onto Owen Hart, which ultimately leads to a 3 count on Owen.
And Yoko was trying to call timeout at that point too, and they didn't
see it. Yep. So you get them eliminated. Ultimately, Kyle, this match is going to come to an end soon after between 1-2-3 Kid as he goes to the top, and Razor Ramon comes back in, throws Kid into Sid, which leads to Sid getting pinned, I believe. And the Smoking Guns, much like called on WCW by Bischoff, are going to be your Raw Bowl winners, Kyle. What'd you think about the match?
By the way, did you also miss the little nugget at the beginning of this match, which was that the tag titles were on the line?
No, I was going to say, like, what the hell do you win other than just being Raw Bowl champions? I never once heard the tag titles were on the line. Did they actually say that?
Yeah, it was in the middle. It was towards the end of this match where they were just saying, like, not only do they win that, and they said like the tag titles also being also up for grabs. They're just saying like how important the Raw Bowl was because it's a tag titles and the trophy were on the line.
Oh, I didn't catch the tag titles.
And I'm like, do you think they probably would have like maybe promoted that a little bit if a title was on the line, or
You'd
said
think so.
something at the beginning, but they didn't. But no, this was for the tag titles. But as far as the match in general, as much as it was an overreach for trying to be creative, I actually thought it was an overall entertaining match. Like I really didn't have I don't think the match sucked. It was just a lot going on. I think that they wanted this to almost be the same equivalent as 3 matches because there were 3 pinfalls. And if they would have done it right, they could have gotten away with it. I wouldn't have had a problem with that, to be completely honest. But I think that, once again, it was kind of like they had all these great ideas to be creative and have this match, like a theme match. And for the most part, it was just a regular tornado match. There was nothing really special about it. I don't think they did a very good job of executing the timeout aspect of it. But I think really as a match in overall, I really don't have a lot of complaints against it. I actually gave it a 2.5-star rating.
I gave it a 2-star rating myself. I just thought it was okay. I thought the rules with the timeout and stuff like that was a little, just kind of became a little obtuse and kind of complicated and weird. But it was okay. Like I said, I liked the Owen Hart Yokozuna elimination, but other than that, I wasn't crazy about it. So 2 stars, it was fine, but it was just what it was.
I mean, once again, it was goofy, sure, but it was fun to watch. And once again, all of the puns were still there. The Raw Bowl Queen was actually, I didn't mind the back and forth between her and Jerry.
No, I did appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm putting everything. Maybe the match itself I gave it 2, but I think the rest of everything else kind of I think it deserved a little bit more because it's part of the production. And I do appreciate that they're trying something creative, because Raw the last couple of weeks, and I'll even say maybe a couple of months, has been the stalest shit on television as far as I'm concerned. Like, so for me, I gotta give them some points for at least making something that looked a little different, and just trying something different. So I at least gotta give them some kudos for that.
Fair enough. I won't disagree with you there. After this, Kyle, they do say that there's going to be a Shawn Michaels announcement next week, which Lawler says, don't get your hopes up. He's retiring, so that's the big announcement. And then we get the Wrigley's halftime report with Doc Hendricks, Kyle. He puts 2 minutes on the clock and starts telling you what's going on. Of course, we got in our main event tonight, Mabel versus Diesel. And then they're going to cut to Jumbo Jim Ross, who's going to have a little interview, backstage interview with Diesel. So they cut to Jim Ross. He says, I don't have Diesel here, but he's going to kick the King's can, is the statement he's given. So that's tough words from Diesel.
And then, also something that Diesel would never say. Go on.
Pretty much. Then ultimately we get a Royal Rumble update, Kyle. Undertaker versus Bret Hart. Of course, that's your world title match. And Double J, Jeff Jarrett's going to be wrestling Ahmed Johnson. And then we get back to the ring, Kyle. And we get back to the ring for the Hogpen, Arkansas Hogpen match replay from In Your House last month. Why the hell they're playing this for us now, I don't know.
It's kind of like when they did the whole Bret Hart versus DDS in their like SummerSlam or whatever it was match that they had with each other. It was like, first of all, it wasn't. I take it back. It really wasn't that bad of a match. I was actually kind of glad to watch it, but it was just, why now? And why this match?
It was strange choice of a match. It was a strange timing. I didn't get it either, but they played it for you, so there you have it.
And they're doing it next week too.
That's what I was going to say. After the match is over, we get a promo, and it's a replay for the Bulldog Bret Hart match. And I'm like, I guess all of In Your House from December is just going to get replayed on Raw in January, which seems a little strange, but here we are. I wonder if the reason why they're doing that is because Bret Hart has not been on TV much at all. And maybe they, like, once again, just kind of like the Shawn Michaels thing, they want to keep the names fresh in the audience. They don't want someone to come back after, or being in a main event match and being like, wait, who the fuck's Bret Hart again? Like, I haven't seen him on TV in a month. Right.
So maybe that's another reason why.
Could be. I don't know. We also get Hakushi versus Jeff Jarrett next week on Raw. So got a lot to look forward to, Kyle. Then we get our main event. It's King Mabel versus Diesel. They cut to Brother Love yet again, monologuing that no one hears, and now at least we kind of know that that's the joke. And then the match is Diesel comes out and kind of attacks Mabel from behind, and they ring the bell, which is very WCW of them to ring the bell prematurely. And 2 seconds later, Mabel takes a big boot and a 3 count, and that's your match. Followed by little Sir Mo getting a jackknife. Kyle, I give this half a star, and I gotta say, I was shocked at how much they basically buried Mabel in this match.
It was confusing. Although this is the one thing I have to say about this, and this is maybe me hating on King Mabel or Mabel in general. This is about as good a match as you could have with these two. I think.
These two were going to have an awful match, but still,
right? I think it would have been better if Diesel and Mabel started the show, then had the Raw Bowl as the main event. To say that this is a main event is kind of insulting. To be promoting this match now for 2 straight weeks and then giving us a 9-second squash. And I know that Diesel is reinventing himself as kind of like this tweener, a tweener. I call it like a tweener face, where he's not doing any heel stuff, but he's high-fiving, everybody who's wearing his merch. But yeah, I think King Mabel deserved at least a little bit better of a match. I think the crowd deserved a better match. But I think the joke behind that is the longer that match would have gone, the worse the match probably would have actually been. What these guys probably would have been able to do. So I feel like a 9-second squash might have actually been a kind of like an old yeller way of putting this match down without torturing us as wrestling enthusiasts and critics. I think this probably would have been as good as it was. I understand a lot of the reason why you're giving it a low score is because if that's the way this match would have been, you don't book it. That's just the way it goes. Like, if that's what you wanted to do, then that should have never happened. That shouldn't be a thing you do. You're starting off the new year and you're trying to push Diesel as having this new attitude. You can't just do that and call it a main event. So that I agree with. I didn't even rate this. I didn't even think it was really a match. So I didn't even give it a score.
Fair enough. After it, Kyle, Diesel comes out and disses King on the handshake, and then takes the Queen of the Raw Bowl, Ashley, with him back to the locker room. And there's the Lombardi trophy segment where Steve Lombardi the Brooklyn Brawler hands his trophy to the Smoking Gun to then break it up and pour the ice-cold brisk iced tea all over him. And that's basically your Raw, Kyle. We kind of close out with a Royal Rumble reminder, and they announce a bunch of entrants that are now officially in the Rumble, Kyle. Diesel, Owen Hart, British Bulldog, Dory Funk Jr., Savio Vega, King Mabel, Bam Bam Bigelow, Barry Horowitz, Yokozuna, Tatanka's coming back, Kyle. And then we get our big announcement, the promo package. The man they called Vader is going to be in the WWF, Kyle, and he is going to be in the Royal Rumble.
Damn. I was actually curious when he was coming back, and I guess Royal Rumbles are always a good place to do it. It's usually Royal Rumbles or right after WrestleMania. They usually will bring in a big person to kind of, because the WrestleMania always feels like the season finale of all the storyline that's been going on, at least since like probably SummerSlam. I think from SummerSlam, maybe Survivor Series, all the way to WrestleMania, you're kind of building for something normally if everything's going correctly and people aren't jumping ship between WCW and WWF. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Vader does.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kyle, that's Raw. So what'd you think?
So I think me being the eternal optimist on this, for all intents and purposes, this was a one-match show. Let's just call it what it was. It's a one-match show. I felt that one-match show overall delivered as far as from an entertainment perspective. If you're talking from an execution perspective, no, it was not a very well executed match, but I think it still was entertaining enough. There were several important things that came out of this Raw. In particular, the Vader announcement. Once again, we're continuing the Diesel tweener face character with that squash match. We get the introduction of Billionaire Ted segment, which I know you and I really didn't talk much about, but I'm sure we'll talk about after we kind of talk about how we felt about Raw. But once again, I think this is a new year, and WWF is clear now that they are recognizing WCW, which I think is a good and a bad thing. I actually like the fact that they kind of ignored the noise, but maybe it's now where they have no choice. They got to fight fire with fire, because they notice that, the ratings are a real thing now. Like they know that there's a real player in this, because I mean both shows are sharing each other's fan bases now.
Yeah, I forgot about that to mention the whole Billionaire Tag segment. It's actually how they closed out the show. I don't know. I mean, it's the Raw show in general wasn't all that good for me. You're right. They're trying something new. They're trying something different. So for that, you can tell that I think WCW, for if nothing else, they've caught the attention of Vince at this point. You can tell, they're starting to run these Billionaire Ted segments now. They're acknowledging that there's something going on, and they're trying something different. Hey, we're going to start putting on, we're going to put pay-per-view matches on their show. We're going to try this Raw Bowl. We're going to try different things like that. So you can see that they're trying to do something about it. But ultimately, I don't think they're there right now. I think WCW was still ahead of them, and for me, Nitro wins this week.
Oh yeah, I will say that Nitro, I think from a full production perspective, I think they had the much more complete show, because once again, we're talking a full card versus, with all intents and purposes, one match. That was once again a gimmicky match at best, still entertaining, but from a I wouldn't even say old school, but a traditional wrestling match, there was nothing traditional about it. So from that perspective, yes, I would still give Nitro the win. I give credit that Raw gave us something that we're not used to seeing. So at the very least, I'm going to watch it. And I think they did a good job of promoting the Raw Bowl. Now, whether or not the Raw Bowl was as good as the promotion of it, I think we'll leave that. I think we went into it knowing that this could be either really entertaining or really, really bad. And I'm glad that I don't think it was like a complete and utter disaster. Not saying it was good, but I'm not saying that this was something that was like, unrecoverable, like being that egregious as far as how bad it could be.
Yeah. Ultimately, Kyle, the Nielsen ratings for this week, you get a 2.6 out of Raw, which of course they were preempted from our last episode. So nothing different there. And then a 2.5 actually from Nitro, which matches their 2.5 from the week before. So regardless of what we think and catching the eyes and this and that, Raw still holding their own and winning in the ratings war in many weeks. So despite what you're hearing from Bischoff and them on Nitro, Raw's still right there with them.
The one thing I was curious about is you said 2.5 for Nitro, which was the same as Christmas Day.
Yep.
But once again, that was the only show in town. So that 2.5 could have easily been, you take, both those, you still might get half the audience still watching a wrestling show on Monday. So maybe that 2.5 isn't anything shocking. But I just found it very interesting that they had just as good a rating on Christmas Day as they did on January 1st.
Yeah, that they did. We'll have to see what their rating is going to be next week, Kyle, as we are going to be reviewing the January 8th episodes of Nitro and Raw. And, again, we apologize that this one came out a little bit late, but next week's will come out at the normal time. And if you haven't subscribed to us, so what are you waiting for? Go follow us on iTunes. We're on Google Play. You can go to our social media accounts. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We post all of when new shows are posted, anything fun, that kind of stuff. We get it out on there as well. And you can always go to MondayNightTours.com for all of our social media, past episodes, the whole ordeal. And that said, for Kyle Hogan, I am Josh Kaiser, and we will see you next time on the Monday Night Tours.
Have a good whatever day this comes out. See ya.